Welcome to Commissaire Commentaries Season 2. We're doing this podcast, Ryan Fu and I, by USA Cycling officials, for USA Cycling officials, riders, and the cycling community as a whole. And we're here to discuss various cycling and officiating topics and explore who our officials are, why they do what they do, and what we can do to help our officiating program thrive. Again, I'm Marcy. This is Ryan. This is our final episode of 2024, and we have a wonderful guest today, Bonnie Walker, who is USA Cycling's technical director, and we are excited to get some insight into her role and just share that with the whole community. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thanks. Happy to be here. I wasn't expecting to be one of your guests ever on this thing, but I figured with Ryan involved that it was inevitable.
Well, we've done this for 2 years, thanks to the support of you and the NTC. This is second season, so I feel like people know Bonnie Walker through the technical direct email updates that you provide, and this is a good opportunity for a lot of our newer officials and even our existing officials to get to know you a little bit better, Bonnie.
Okay.
And as usual, I always like to start off with a favorite memory of Bonnie. Before this episode, I was looking at how long have I known Bonnie Walker? And I've known Bonnie since 2004. So this is our 20th anniversary of knowing each other. That was at Tour of the Gila. I think you remember Tom Simonson at that time had assigned the crew, and I was the brand new official and first time traveling out and going to a big stage race. And my impressions of Bonnie has always been very good. And she was there, very welcoming, kind of took me under her wing and just made sure that I had somebody to ask questions and how to deal with stage race issues. You know, the interesting thing with working with officials is we kind of see each other 2 races a season. So we get to know each other gradually over time. But each year getting to know Bonnie is just always gets better and better. The favorite memory is, again, it was at Gila, and Bonnie was her first time as Com 1 in the women's pro race. And I was her first time Com 2. There was this one part where I was trying to communicate to Bonnie about going down this twisty section, and I just couldn't articulate it very clearly. And the driver just grabbed my radio and just started blah, 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 blah. And then Bonnie said, who the is talking over the radio? But it was just one of those fun memories at Gila and getting to know Bonnie. And I'm looking forward to another 20 years with getting to know Bonnie. So.
I'm trying to think back to when I first met Bonnie. I don't know if it was earlier, but the first time I spent time around Bonnie and met her as an official, as an adult, was when I took my Cat A class in 2017 or 2018. Not quite as long as your 20 years, Ryan. And Bonnie, if it was earlier than that, I'm sorry if I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I don't even, which class were you in? Where were we?
We were in Winston-Salem.
Oh, yes.
And that was Chuck was teaching the class.
Yes.
With you. And my favorite thing with Bonnie is probably, and this has spanned multiple races, is her tiny cup club whenever she has an espresso. So, yes.
Just had one.
I was thinking about you lots when I was in Italy for the ENC course, because I kid you not, we had group espresso 5 times a day. So definitely a lot of thinking about Tiny Cup Club. I was member for a week.
That's great.
Okay, Bonnie, tell us about how did you get into cycling?
Okay. Well, I think we all get into this side of cycling for one of many reasons. Mine was I used to be a racer. So some of you know that, some of you don't. So some of you are probably like, what? You raced a bike? What? You ride? But yeah, I started racing my bike at the track in Houston at Elkhek Velodrome, gradually moved over to the road side of things. And I noticed that we were always short of officials at the track. And that was back in the days of Kathy Volsky, if anybody remembers her. And so she talked me into taking an officials course so that I could kind of help out. So I would race on Friday nights. I would go out on Saturday and officiate like the entry level races. And then I'd race on the road Saturday morning, Sunday morning type thing. So that's really how I got started with this. I think, like I said, I was in Houston. Once I moved to Austin for work, I got more busy with my job and less training on the bike. So it kind of just gradually took a stance where officiating kind of took over from the racing side of it. And it was like, I think where I live in Austin, and it's pretty hilly. And when I lived in Houston, I rode the hills much better than after I moved to Austin, simply because I wasn't riding my bike much anymore. So that's kind of where I came from and how I got involved in it. And then I worked with the LA here, or the local association in Texas. We started it like a long time ago, and I did that for, I hate to say it, but like 17 years, and finally got away from that. So I've been involved with cycling for many, many years.
How did you get to become the technical director? How did that happen?
Well, one night, no, just kidding.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting because I don't know, probably over the last maybe 15, 16 years or so, I had talked to USA Cycling at maybe 3 different times about possibly coming in and interviewing for the technical director position. The first time it was the position you needed to be in Colorado Springs, which I wasn't really interested in moving at that time. And then the next time I kind of half-heartedly talked to them about it. And that's actually when Chuck was involved, or got involved, and Chuck Hodge came in as the technical director position. And then the last time was Chuck reaching out to me and saying, hey, it was after the pandemic, we're going to rehire this position, and I wanted to see if you're interested in it. And so those of you who know me know that Chuck and I have a really long-standing, good relationship. We've worked together for many, many years, are truly friends outside of cycling. And I thought long and hard about it. I was in the software world forever. I mean, that's what I've done since college. And I was really kind of getting bored with it and looking for a change. And so I'm like, this could be my chance. This could be my step into what I'm going to call Bonnie retirement mode and not do software anymore. And so Chuck I think he called me, we talked about it. He left, I believe, for either the World Championships or the Olympics. I can't remember which one. And then called me when he got back, like 2 or 3 weeks later. And he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think I'm going to do it. And so he's like, you are? And I'm like, well, what did you think? He goes, I figured you'd do it. So we kind of worked out the details, and then I came on board. And at that time, I came on to report directly to Chuck, which was really, really good. I mean, again, we had that strong working relationship already. And I think we think a lot alike. So it kind of fed into a good environment for me.
So now that you are the technical director, walk us through what you do on a day-to-day basis. So I think we all know you work on assigning officials and managing the rule book. What are some other things?
Yeah, so what I found out when I came on board is that the technical director wears a lot of hats. So in addition to the officials, like you mentioned, that's like a big part of my responsibility, but I also inherited the mechanics program when Chuck left USA Cycling. So I have the mechanics under me. I do all the registration for the UCI Continental teams and all the domestic elite teams. You mentioned the regulations. I manage those as well as our policies. And then one of the really fun aspects of my job is all the disciplinary actions that come in. So all the complaints that come in about riders or officials or just members in general fall on my desk, and those I get to review and kind of go through that process. It's not really a fun part. I kind of, that was a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for a good official, that shouldn't be your favorite part is punishing anyone. So
yeah, it's not normally officials that we're dealing with. I mean,
right.
occasionally there are, but most of them are rider issues. And it's really kind of interesting to see how it's evolved over the last, I don't know, last 4 years or so after the pandemic. It's like everybody tells on everyone for everything. So it's a matter of sorting through and figuring out what's the truth and what's not, and what's racing and what's not, and then trying to come up with a reasonable, if there's some sort of disciplinary action that needs to take place, what that could be.
Got it. Yeah. So with managing the mechanic program, what all does that entail?
So if any of the mechanics listen to this, they're going to laugh because I tell them all the time, it's like dealing with high school girls. So it's me and all the guys. Actually, I mean, it's a lot of fun. We have, I think the big thing that I had to get done when I took it over after Chuck left was to hold a mechanics course. We haven't had one in, I think, 7 years, they said. And so we put this group, there was like 3 of us that were actually working on it, myself, and then Mark Nemec, if you know Mark, he used to be part of the SRAM Neutral Support Services at all the races, and then Mike Wilson, who runs the Elite Racing Services. So the 3 of us kind of put our heads together and started working on this course. And so we actually pulled it off this past February. We went to Tucson, Arizona for about 4 days. And we had 9 or 10 instructors that we brought in. We had, I think, just under 40 participants that came. The interesting part is we stayed at a YMCA camp. And if you think YMCA camp, it's exactly what you're thinking. So we had the whole place to ourselves, which was nice. But the lodging and the food was a little different. We had rooms that had like 3 sets of bunk beds in them and a shared bath, and everybody had to bring their own like sleeping stuff. So sheets, sleeping bag, whatever they wanted to sleep in. And then we ate food right there, which was more like summer camp food. So it was like hot dogs, hamburgers, chicken nuggets type stuff. So it was fine. But it wasn't like our ideal place of what we would expect, right? I mean, like officials, mechanics are kind of used to like sometimes you don't have the best of accommodations and you don't have like nice meals. You're given kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? So we made do with that. But anyway, so we're trying to rebuild that program. I have a group of 8 people that we call our Mechanics Advisory Council. It's kind of like the National Technical Commission on the official side, and we're trying to drive that process. So right now we are focused on what those upgrade paths might look like, because similar to riders and officials, there's an upgrade path for mechanics as well. And we're also planning out our 2025 clinic or course, if you will. So right now we're trying to identify the actual location. So it's kind of interesting because working for a nonprofit, it's like you don't really have, like they don't say, hey, here's $20,000 for you to go off and produce a mechanics course. It's kind of like money in is money out. So it's like you have to net to zero, which is the same on the official side. So it's kind of challenging for me to try to balance that and figure out, okay, what makes sense and how do we make this happen?
Mm-hmm. Hence the YMCA camp and chicken nuggets.
Yeah, exactly. That could be another possibility for 2025. We have a couple other places that we're looking at, but yeah, when you look at the bottom line, that's probably where we're going to end up. So I will tell you that Vanessa went with me to the clinic, and we decided we weren't staying there, and so we rented an Airbnb. So, close by. So we would sneak out like after dinner, like we always had evening sessions. We just kind of would sneak out and leave, and then we come back early in the morning. So I think outside of Vanessa and I, there's only one person that was at the clinic that realized we did that. It was like, yeah, it was just too much.
Bonnie, I want to touch on the responsibility about managing the disciplinary process.
Mm-hmm.
I've been invited to conduct an investigation or 2. And I know at your level, you're seeing, I don't know how many you're seeing, but I know that's can be not a pleasant part of the process.
Right.
Would there be any message out to the cycling community about what have you observed through these that can help reduce the number of disciplinary issues? And maybe what can officials do to help also contribute to reducing from not getting to your desk in the first place?
Yeah, actually, Ryan, I'm really glad you mentioned officials, because that is one thing that that I see a lot of, and I'm starting to push back a little bit on. So as officials, I think a lot of the times we're not sure like what we can and can't do. We know what the regulations are, but we're not sure, right? So it's a lot of times it's easier just to write it up and send it to me or put it into the post event. Normally anything that can be dealt with on race day, so consider it kind of like field of play type behaviors, those really should be dealt with on site. And there's some that could be serious enough where, like, I don't know, let's just say you disqualify a rider for bad behavior, but it could also be something where you want to recommend a more serious effect. So maybe a suspension or something. There's stuff like that. But a lot of times, for a while there, I was getting write-ups from people that would come in and they would explain about what happened and wanted me to take action. And my first question to them has always been, okay, what did you do at the event? What did you do when you had this discussion with the rider? Was the rider relegated, disqualified? Did you talk to the rider? Did you talk to the person who's, you know, that they're accusing or anything like that? It's really hard for me to do anything if the chief referee hasn't taken some sort of action. And that doesn't mean that they have to like, oh, you know, you're gonna be disqualified, you know, based on this, and then I'm gonna call Bonnie and send this to her. You're gonna be suspended. But it's more like, I want to understand what you did to mediate the situation. And maybe something that's happening during the race that you can take control of. It may be something that happened after the race that you should deal with. I want to understand what your thought process is and who you've reached out to, right? So if rider A comes to the chief referee and says that rider B was doing this, do you just take the word from rider A that happened and then discipline rider B? Or do you take the initiative to have that conversation with rider B and try to get to the bottom of it and then make a decision based on what you've figured out or found out? So I think I guess my message would be is that please think about what's happening and what issues are coming up at the races and how, as the chief referee, you can handle those directly. I still would like you to put that in your post event as far as your discipline report, like, hey, this happened and I disqualified this rider because of X, Y, and Z. But unless there's some further disciplinary action that it seems viable, then I think, you know, if you can handle that on site, that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great advice to remind us. I think sometimes it's a little hard to kind of close out an issue sometimes with riders coming back or not being satisfied, or you kind of can't do anything because it's just one person's word against the other. And as officials, we need to be able to firmly shut that door and say, hey, here's where we're at, and I can't necessarily do anything. I've talked to the other rider, issued a warning.
Yeah, and Marcy, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of it. It's just racing, right? And we kind of, I hate to say that, but a lot of these things are just racing. And it's that experience that you have as an official to be able to see that. Newer people or that are just getting started may not have that same perspective as some of you that have been around for a while and have seen variations of behavior, or just are familiar with racer. If you've been a racer before and you used to race crits, you know how crits are raced and you know how lines are taken and that type of thing. So yeah, it's a lot of it comes down to you and your experience and how comfortable you feel in that role. Now, my goal would be to not have you in a role like that if you're not comfortable with it. But also keep in mind that you're not the only official there. You have a crew, and utilize those people. There's hopefully the crews are being built where there's some the experience level varies. So you may have some newer people that are just coming in and are more green, but yet you have that experienced person that can be there to help guide them. And the younger ones or newer ones can learn from that.
Definitely. And even when you're all experienced, just to bring it up, like remembering that you can kind of make a little panel and say, guys, what do you think?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be solely on you. And I mean, I think when we stop learning is when we stop having fun. And so I think every situation is unique. And even when we're out there working bike races, I mean, I think the three of us can agree that there's always going to be something that we make a decision on, and then we think about it later and it's like, maybe I should have handled that a little differently. Or I think next time, if it was the same situation, I might take this approach. But again, then you have that hindsight, right? So normally officials are kind of under pressure from riders or team managers to make a decision and make it quickly, or even the timing company, right, to get the results out, the race organizer. But I think, taking the time to make the correct decision and feeling good about it is important, but also know that you can learn from everything that you do and any decision that you make.
Bonnie, I want to ask about the working groups that you have tasked the NTC with some themes you want to work on, right? The recruitment and retention, the event models, develop and maintain the quality of officials. What are some of the activities that are going on, and what can officials expect out of these discussions? How would you like them to participate? What type of outcomes do you want out of these?
Yeah, I think so. For those of you who don't know, the NTC is the National Technical Commission, which is made up of senior level officials. They're kind of like an advisory group. They're people that I bounce ideas off, or people that can help me get some things done if I need it. And so one of the things that we've been trying to work on for several years now, and we've taken a different approach this year, is that we're always looking for new officials and always looking for how do we retain officials. And we're trying to figure out, trying to keep the race directors happy, because a lot of them will say, oh, we don't want this official, we don't want that official. And so it's a matter of figuring out what the problem is. And so the NTC has kind of been tasked. We did a lot of brainstorming, came up with a variety of themes, and then we kind of drilled down into a few of those that we could kind of tackle for the year. I think in the past, we've always had this problem where we've had all these ideas that we wanted to do and nothing was ever getting done because everybody was off running in a different direction. So we've really settled on those 3 groups, Ryan, that you mentioned. I will say that, as we all know, once summer hits with bike racing, everybody is super busy. So while we made a lot of progress in the beginning with getting these groups defined and then pulling in part of what we wanted to do was not just make this about the NTC, but bring in others from our officials core to kind of be members of these groups and kind of, get different views, get different opinions on what we could do. So once we got the group settled, summer kind of hit, and a lot of the work got put on the side, or, the NTC is all voluntary as well, and people's jobs kind of took over and people got busy. So it's been a challenge. Everybody is back together. I think the groups are a little bit more focused. There's some that are much further along than others. And the goal is that we're going to come up with a plan on how we can, let's just say, for example, one of the things that we're looking at is like the quality, how we can increase the quality of our officials, whether that means additional training or bringing evaluations back into the mix, that type of thing. But it's utilizing the people that's on that committee to kind of drive some of this work and what works for them and what is the method that they feel would be successful in going forward. And then I think what's going to happen across all these groups is then it'll further expand to bring in more people to kind of help see this. So we're trying to set I want to call them guidelines, but we're trying to set the direction that we want to take this in. and what are the things that we need to get out of it. And then I think we'll expand into others or pull others in. Each of the groups are very, very different. So some are more involved, like especially the mentoring and the training one. We have one that's looking kind of like, what is the correct crew size? Like we a lot of people still use what we deemed our correct crew sizes to run a criterium from like 12 or 15 years ago, when we were seeing like 800, 900 riders on a weekend crit, right? Now we don't have that problem. Our ridership's down a little bit. So we have to think smarter. Plus the other side of that is the cost, right? To bring all the officials in. So there's a lot of factors that weigh into this. And so we're trying to realistically go back and evaluate some of that stuff and figure out, like, can we still produce a quality product, meaning the officials crew, with maybe some less people? And if it's less people, are there key people that we need to have? Are there certain levels that we need to have? That type of thing. So there's a lot of work being done. Like I said, some groups are further along than others, but I think we'll all eventually get there to have a good product in the end that we can share and push out to the rest of the crew or rest of the officials.
Would you say, Bonnie, there's an area that maybe needs more work, or are they about equally important? Like, for example, recruitment. I know that during the pandemic, we saw a steep decline in the number of officials. And, once racing started picking back up, there was this challenge of, well, we lost a lot of officials. Are there any particular areas where you're kind of focused in on?
Well, it's kind of funny because this just recently came up in the last several weeks, where we always talk about officials declining. But nobody ever really looks at the officials declining along with the number of permitted events declining as well. So we track both of those, but we track them in different areas, right? And so I think you guys know Trish Black. She's over the event services team, and one of the things that she's always pulling our metrics on events and how many rider days and where we're at this year compared to next year, and where we were last year at this time, and looking at stuff. And so that's one of the things I talked to her about, because it's like we talk about needing more officials, but part of the problem is we need more races to send these officials to, right? I mean, having officials is great, but if there's not enough work for them to do, then they're going to lose interest. So it's kind of tied into multiple things, right? A lot of people just look at it, well, all the officials are leaving. Well, yeah, okay. So a lot of officials are older. A lot of our crew, we are actually doing a great job of bringing in some younger people these days, especially in the California area. So thank you, Ryan. But we also, it's like, I can remember when I started officiating, and you could essentially work multiple races a weekend if you wanted to. There was that much going on. And now it's like, you look at stuff and it's like, some of these areas and states, they may have one race a month. And so how do you disseminate or assign a crew? You've got one race and you need like 5 positions and you've got 20 officials. I mean, how do you figure out how to make that work? So there's a lot of different factors involved, I think.
Yeah, yes, you're right. There's, I guess, multiple parts of the equation. And
yeah.
There was something you also said, Bonnie, about kind of, I don't know if it brought chills up my spine, but the word was evaluations.
Yes.
And I think you remember,
yes,
there was an era where there were evaluations done. And there was this sort of fear about, we're going to get in trouble, or this is going to be a bad thing. It could end your career. Are you thinking about how we could do it differently, or it's still in the sort of exploratory phases where you're just still looking at concepts on what we might do?
Yeah, so that's one of our working groups, is encompassing of evaluations, and that's definitely something that we've thought about over the years of bringing back, and it's also something that our officials have asked for, right? I mean, that is a great way to provide feedback. Ryan, I know I can remember exactly what you're referring to. And Marcy, I don't know if you had gone through any of those evaluations before.
No,
in the past.
I was on the side of, hearing about them at home. So
yeah, I figured. But I mean, there was a time when it became like almost like you were afraid to be evaluated, because it was like, I can remember, I'll give an example from my own. I went to Tour de Tuna, which was a stage race in Western Pennsylvania. I think I went as I don't know if it was my first year, maybe my second year to go there as an official. And the second year I was told, well, you're going to be evaluated. And I'm not going to mention who the evaluator was, but I was scared to death. And I actually was working on this evaluator's crew. And every day I waited for something, right? Like, he's going to say something. He's going to say something. He's going to say something. And it was finally like Saturday night, we were waiting in the lobby to go to dinner, and he came down and he still hadn't said anything. And so I'm like, so do you have anything for me? And he's like, have anything what? I'm like, well, on my evaluations, oh, you're doing fine. But it was like, I mean, you're just like, we were on pins and needles. And then there's other situations where those evaluations, like, you'd walk in and they would just let you have it, right? I mean, it was like everything from how you were dressed to how you scored a race. I mean, everything, how you talked on the radio. And a lot of it, I hate to say this or use this word, but I think a lot of it back then was kind of like intimidation, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know why that was. I don't know if that was just how things were done back there. I mean, I hear about these horror stories from training classes as well, right? And when people are just like boom, boom, boom. But I don't know if it was trying to really weed through and see who you were as a person or how you handled pressure, or if it was more like, well, we don't want these new people coming in and taking the work from us. I don't know what it was, but it was definitely not a good environment. So yeah, going forward, I think we have the right people working in that group that will prevent that from happening, or come up with a method that will make it more welcoming. I mean, really, the mentoring and evaluations is all about making you a better person, right? Let's focus on what it is you need to work on to get to where you want to be as an official.
I'm sure that all of us have had situations at races where it kind of gets out of hand for one reason or the other, whether it's your fault or not. And maybe you are kind of freaking out thinking, oh my God, does this ruin my chances at advancement? Oh my God, am I going to get the tech director call? Give us some insight on that and the current focus on growth versus shutting people down, or how all of that works and what sort of lines you can't cross for there to be an issue, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I think I kind of alluded to it in the beginning of our chat, is that I get complaints about everybody, right? And officials are, right or wrong, officials tend to get their fair share of complaints. And a lot of the times it's unhappy riders, right? Like, I'll use an example, no names, but a rider had emailed, he was disqualified for throwing a water bottle. And the official said, well, you're disqualified because there's no littering. So it's like, okay, he had told me he threw it in the feed zone. In my opinion, throwing it in the feed zone is exactly where he should throw it. Mm-hmm. Reached out to the officials and they're like, no, it wasn't in the feed zone. It was like around the start finish. We all saw it. We all got the number. He was disqualified. And so I look at stuff like that and I'm like, okay, maybe there's a learning opportunity here, right? I mean, okay, it wasn't like they were out in the middle of the Gila National Forest at Tour de Gila, where it is a big deal if you throw a water bottle into the forest. It's a $500 fine. But it was like the water bottle was tossed where there's people with the race, right? And I don't know. I mean, I think it comes with experience and what your expectations are. The rider swears that he went back and picked up the bottle. Mm-hmm. The official and the race director have something different to say. Mm-hmm. And so, I kind of was the middleman, like asking this question, sending this response. And then eventually the router's just like, okay, well, it's not going to make a difference. Thank you. And so I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
did he really throw the bottle? Did he really litter? Did he? So it's kind of like finding that middle ground. But I think part of what people are afraid to do is they're afraid to make a decision because they'll be wrong.
Right.
And that is part of our learning process. That is how we learn, right? If you look at things, and if a situation happens in a race and you've never seen it, you have to make a decision, but yet you're so afraid that what if it's the wrong decision? And again, that's where you have a crew, right? Hopefully you've got some experienced people to go back to talk to and make a solid decision, but I don't think you should ever be afraid to make a decision. One of the things that I think it's important for officials to know is that as the technical director, I'm never going to interfere with field of play decisions. So if they made the decision to disqualify the rider because he littered and he's disqualified. I'll try to appease him and give him some information, or try to get to the bottom of it and maybe make it more about a learning experience for one side or the other. But that's your decision to make. Some of the bigger ones, like, you want to recommend somebody for suspension. Obviously, we don't give you that power. And there's a reason for that, because we want to make sure that's the right thing to do. But yeah, we don't want you out there just like haphazardly making bad calls all over the place, say, well, I'm learning, but we're hopeful that as you make these mistakes, you'll go back and either somebody will chat with you, whether it's me or a more senior official at the event, and says, well, here's a different way you could have handled it. There's more than one way to handle every situation. And what you choose to do as an official is what kind of helps shape you and helps prepare you for the next level.
Speaking of next levels, we've had C, B, A, and then at times or not, we've had NatCom, which has kind of been there and gone away, and it just came back. Yes. So we would love to hear more about that and what that means.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I don't think either one of you were around. Ryan, maybe you, and Marcy, I'm sure you're aware of it, when we used to have like Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4 level officials, along with NatCom and then International Commissaire. And those got switched over to letters, which made a lot of people mad at some point, because those who had gone through the Cat 1 class, rightfully so, went through the time period where it was more intimidation about how you got there and how you answered and stuff like that. So it was a big deal. And now all of a sudden those Cat 1 officials are now category A officials, along with the Cat 2s. And so those things kind of merge. So this is something that happens from time to time. I'm not sure of the reasoning of why we went from numbers to letters to begin with, but you're right. We had C, everybody started at level C, went to B, went to A, then went to NatCom. And then the next step would be the International Commissaire, that course that's taught by the UCI. Several years ago, well, it's been a while now. It's probably been like since 2012, 2013, maybe. The UCI came out with an additional course, and it was called the Elite National Commissaire. So what that did was, well, one of the reasons they came out with that course is because they felt like people that were national commissaires from their federations across the world were showing up at the International Commissaire class with a wide variety of experience. So while we have, in the US, I think we have one of the best training programs in the countries. There's various levels. It changes from year to year, but I do think we spend a lot of time training our officials. A lot of the people in different countries, when they first become an official, their title is National Commissaire. That is their title. And so therefore, think about it on our side. If we took a brand new level official and we send them to the International Commissaire class and expect them to be successful, it's going to be a wide variety of experience that we're going to have there. So the UCI decided that they were going to take over this training, and they were going to put a different level in there called Elite National Commissaire that the federations would send their people to, and if they passed that class and they were of a certain age, then they were eligible to go on to the International Commissaire. Okay, that's all well and good. Those of us who had gone all the way through NatCom suddenly found ourselves to the point where, oh, guess what? We're no longer eligible for International Commissaire. Now we have to take yet another class, right? So this is something that's happened in the past. And, you know, those of us at that level that wanted to advance, we just bit the bullet and sat down and took the next level of training in order to be eligible to go on. What we found with that elite national commissaire class is, in addition to when the UCI decided that they needed to implement this course, they kind of changed the structure of what their international commissaire course was about, and they changed kind of the emphasis of it. It used to be more focused heavily on refereeing, and then all of a sudden it became more focused heavily on judging and refereeing, but judging became a very important part of it. What we were finding is that our Category A officials that we were sending to our elite NatCom courses were struggling a bit. One, because the training that they had received up until that time was straight off of USA cycling regulations. It was straight like, hey, how do you judge a crit? You know, you're a starter of a time trial. How do you do that? Which is all skills that are needed. But at the same time, when they hit that elite national commissaire course, it was all UCI focused. So the regulations changed. There was nothing, not one single question on those elite national commissaire tests about USA cycling regulations. Like, what do we do with juniors 11 and 12, right? And so it was hard. It was hard for the people. And unless they were aware of that and prepared when they went in, you know, it was a complete disaster for them. And so we've been talking about for a while about how we can make our officials more successful and how we can get them advanced up to that international commissaire rank. And so a couple of years ago, we rewrote what was once our Road A, or our Category A test, and we implemented more along the lines of what the UCI would consider important. We focused heavily on UCI regulations, and we focused heavily on judging. And I don't mean like judging a crit. I mean like judging at a stage race, right? Because at that level, that's what you're going to be expected to do. And even as a Category A, you know, you were eligible to be a chief judge at like our biggest stage races here. So we changed the focus, changed the emphasis, ran the course for the first time. It was, I think we had 9 people that took that first class, and it was a lot. I mean, I don't think they were ready for it. I think they were. Some of them were ready for it. I will take that back. But there were some that were thinking, oh, it's just an officials course. I'm just going to go and take it. And to be honest, most of our classes, while I know for our A course, Marcy, I know it for the one that you were at, that I was at, I mean, it was stuff that you'd done before. There was probably some new stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, it's probably things that you knew going into that class already. You didn't get to use your rule book to look up answers, but you probably knew enough to get through it because you passed, I remember. And so with the development of this course, we started talking this summer because we were going to hold the second version of that in October, which we did. But we started talking this summer about, do we really want to, you know, this whole emphasis of what this course used to be is totally different. It's no longer USA Cycling. I mean, you're a USA Cycling official, but it's more based on what the UCI expects and what the regulations on their side are, how they're going to implement things. The terminology is different. I mean, those of you who've never looked at the UCI regulations, it's probably a good thing to do because it's a whole different world. It means the same stuff, but you'll read it and you'll be like, what the heck are they talking about, right? So it's terminology, it's new regulations. The work as an official is the same. It's just understanding how you run the event, what are the regulations that you use when you need to discipline, you know, how does that work? And so we started talking about, well, maybe it's time to really change this Road A designation, if you will, and bring back our old NatCom, because the NatCom level that we used to teach was along the same lines. So I would challenge and say that the course we're teaching now for what was the Road A, or what the newly developed course, is every bit as hard, and probably harder than what our NatCom course was when we used to have that. So similar to how when the UCI rolled out the ENC, it's like, okay, are we going to still have a NatCom course? Didn't make sense. So what we did for the first couple of classes, kind of as that interim period, the UCI comes in, they teach the ENC course. You either pass or you don't pass. There's no like grading on a curve, any of that stuff. In fact, they give you negative points. So if you don't know the question, it's better to not answer, because if you do answer and it's wrong, they take away points. They don't give you credit for trying. And so one of the things, I think that was when Randy Schaefer was the technical director, and one of the things that Randy did is that those individuals who maybe didn't have a high enough grade to pass the Elite NatCom course, he kind of evaluated them individually and said, okay, maybe they're not at that level yet. However, they are right on par with what our NatComs are, and he awarded that title. And so with this most recent, what we were calling the Road A course in October, we kind of took that same approach. So the difference is, so the people that truly passed, like at the UCI level, or what I would consider that National Commissaire level, they were awarded a National Commissaire title. The ones that didn't have the high marks to get to that level, I reviewed them individually as far as, our group discussions and class participation and the answers that they did provide on the test, and how they did their homework. And I felt that those individuals were every bit in line with what our current Road A course, what it was. Marcy, the course that you took, Ryan, the course that you took, I felt very much that they were in line with that. And so I made that same distinction that we did several years ago when the ENC rolled out, and I awarded them the Road A. Could I have just said, no, you guys didn't pass and move on, you have to come back? No, I didn't. I felt like they deserved that designation, and that's why I went there. Going forward, we won't ever, well, I don't want to say ever, because everything comes around, but we will only be teaching the NatCom course. We will go CB and then NatCom. However, for those people who are Road A's, or those people who were NatComs before ENC came in, or those people who just received their NatCom designation, in my opinion, they're all eligible to take the ENC course. Unlike the UCI, we're not going to go back and require the Road A's, oh, guess what? You were at this level, but now we've added something else, and now you have to achieve that. I think the question came up, and Marcy, I'm sure you're aware of this, is that some of the Road A's are questioning now, the existing ones. Well, if we'd have known that we would have got a NatCom title out of it, we probably would have gone. And it's, I think about that, it's like, well, but we weren't really offering it to that level because you were already kind of where we wanted you to be. But we are thinking about, and we will talk, I think we have an NTC meeting next week. We are going to talk about possibly having the ability for any of those existing Road A's who want to sit for this title. They won't have to take a course. These are my ideas. I'm going to run them by the NTC. They won't have to come and pay for the money and take the course, but they will have to meet the same set of standards, which means there will be testing involved. And if they pass the test, great. I'll more than happy change their Road A to be a NatCom if that is something that they want to pursue. So that can be for anybody. That could be for our NatComs that haven't, they've been NatComs for 20 years, right? And they maybe they want to take the new test to see how it is, or those Road A individuals that want to take it, or for our future NatComs who are currently Road Bs. So it'll be those that level, the Road Bs will still have to go through the course, but anybody that's an existing Road A or NatCom, if they want to take this course, they're going to, they're more than welcome to take the course, but if they just want to take the test, they're more than welcome to take the test. That's my plans anyway, because I think that'll probably be a way to kind of make them feel valued. I think, I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, and it's probably my fault for not just saying this is going to be a NatCom course, even though I knew the content was different. But I also don't want to alienate anybody, and it wasn't our intent to say, oh, well, these people, now that they're NatComs, they're better than you. That's not the case at all. I consider everybody equal. But to get that title, you're going to have to go through the same type of structured test and exam that everybody else did.
Well,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You started answering my follow-up question before I even asked it. So I think that your idea anyway, and I hope it comes to fruition, probably helps reassure those who currently are Category A's to give them the opportunity for that title and hopefully repair that feeling that they missed out or got the rug pulled out from under them.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And like I said, that wasn't the intent at all. And I will tell you, I mean, there was some, well, it's like, do we take the existing Road A's and just make them NatComs? But I can tell you that that's probably not going to happen, simply because of the type of material that is now being taught. But I also don't want to, like I said, don't want them to have to go back through a course. I mean, that they got to where they got to based on what the structure was then. And I remember back to when, and Ryan, I don't know if were you already in NatCom when you sat for the ENC? You weren't, were you? You were Road A or Track A?
Yeah, I got word about the ENC, and there was an NC course. I think it was the last NC course. I was like, no, thank you. I'll wait until
and
the ENC.
I mean, if I think you can appreciate the fact it was like, I just remember James Abbott and I, because we had gone through so many training classes, and like, we are not taking another class. And then it was like, all right, do you want to take it? I'll take it if you take it, type thing. So, but it was just like one more thing, right? So one more thing that was getting in the way of where you wanted to be. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to work it out, and everybody, I think there may still be some hard feelings, but I'm hopeful that what we come up with will be a way to kind of mend those hard feelings and give everybody the opportunity to do what they want to do.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like, being able to take a test and not have to go to a course, alleviating any monetary contribution that's necessary, that's probably a strong point as well. So yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, they already paid for that level, right, when they took the Road A. So I'm not gonna make it about money and say, oh, well, now you got to come and pay again. But just know that the test is hard, and they will have to pass. So that's the other side of it.
I will say that, having recently taken it for the second time, the UCI's NatCom course, I would say, was great preparation for the ENC course in terms of its content as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with our NatCom course. It's based a lot off, not entirely, but it is based a lot off of the UCI's NatCom course. And one of the reasons we did that is this is what they're teaching across the world. And so we're trying to kind of level the playing field, if you will. I still think our people in the US are much better off, and Canada too, because they have a good training system where we actually have training programs in place, as opposed to, oh, you want to be an official? Congratulations, you're NatCom. Now you're going to the ENC course. So I'm glad to hear that you felt it was a good preparation for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Fingers crossed, right?
Oh, I know. They told us maybe we'll find out by like Christmas or something. So
yeah, they're not the fastest in tests.
Yeah. I think they wanted to wait until there were some other ENC classes that were going to be happening. So they wanted to wait for all of them to happen before they started getting everything.
Yeah, so you went through the road ENC, and Jared Ferber actually went through the mountain bike one in Germany. So he felt pretty good. How did you feel after yours?
So the first day of testing was pretty hard, but the second felt a lot better. And I think, probably even just 10 minutes after getting back to my room after the first day of testing, I felt tons better than I had right after that. I was like, okay, now that I've had a chance to breathe, and still doing the mental math on, do I think that I got the points, and let's see, like the practical part with all the judging, I felt really great on, and the oral examination went perfectly. So,
Yeah.
I have hopes, but I'm also just really nervous.
I'm sure you did well. You were well prepared, so we'll have to wait and see. You'll find out when I find out, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
I have one advice as you get to the higher levels, one has to understand the UCI regulations, right? I'm so glad that ChatGPT and Gemini are there, because there's been some instances where I've copied the UCI rulebook, pasted it in, and said, make this word sound like American English. And it just turns out like, oh yeah, if you write it that way, it makes a total sense. But my question for you is, from the NorCal, we've been very pleased with a lot of new officials that have come in. And I recall having a discussion with a newer official, and he's like, I'm happy being a C. What's the point of advancing, right? What benefits do I have, or what can I make of advancing, right? Also, another part about newer officials is, well, great, you said I would need to have practical stage racing experience as a judge. And locally, a lot of the stage races have sort of gone away, and the only way to get some of that is going to a national level race. What sort of guidance do you have, Bonnie, for our newer officials out there just started to see, and maybe they've been introduced to the B modules? What's the motivation for them to go to the next levels, and what advice would you give them for finding that experience? And I know you're collecting assignments now. Is there a way they have an opportunity to sign up?
It's a lot of questions in one, Ryan.
Yeah, I try to pack it all together because
let's make sure I have. So so I'll start, and you let
Yes.
me know if I missed something.
Got it.
So yes, so I think a lot of it depends on the person themselves, right? What is their goal? I mean, a lot of people become officials because their kids race, or their husband or wife or spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner races. And so they're at the races anyway. And that's really all they care to do. They don't really have a desire to do anything else. Then we have people like Ryan, people like Marcy, people like some of the newer people, Leanna and Robin, who are just really gung-ho, and they want to see how far they can take this, which I think is great, right? I mean, they're go-getters for sure. They have the means to be able to do a lot of this stuff, and that's what they want to do. So I think, you becoming a C official, I mean, there are very few in-person C courses anymore. NorCal is one of the few that actually does one. And for anybody who knows people that are interested in taking an in-person class, sort of in-person, they're going to be doing a virtual one in January, is my understanding. And when I talked to Eve, Ryan, she said that we could open it up to others if they wanted to attend. I really think that first level course is very important. And it's not that I'm against having the online version, but I don't think you get as much out of it as you would in a true in-person course. So even for any of our C officials out there who have become officials by doing the online, it might not be a bad idea to sit in on this virtual course and just hear, one, it's probably a different part of the country, hear different scenarios, listen to the instructors talk through their experiences and explain things to you. I think it's better. I think you have those experts, if you will, that you can ask questions to. So anyway, so you get your C license. The first recommendation I would do for any C official that has a desire to maybe continue to officiate and work bigger races, I think the first thing that you should do is get your B module worksheet set up. And so those of you who don't know what that is, it's a Google Sheet. It's kind of a self-assessment form that was built several years ago. And you go in and you assess your own skills across various aspects. So we have one for road and we have one for track. The interesting part is we don't have a mountain bike B, so we just have a road and a track. And the other interesting thing to keep in mind is that cyclocross is coupled with road, and it stays with road up through what we're now calling the NatCom level. So even though we say road, it includes cross. So get the modules set up or get the spreadsheet set up, and you can either work with a member of the NTC in your area, reach out to them, or reach out to myself, or the easiest way is to send an email to officials@usacycling.org and ask to have your B module set up for either road or track or both. And myself or Vanessa will get those set up for you and send you a little informational sheet on what you need to do from that point forward. And the reason I say once you become a C official to go ahead and do that is to start working towards that goal, right? Because there's a lot of different things in there that you may never do, or things that you're not aware that you need to do. So you may have been working as a C official for 2 years and you feel like you're ready to go up to the B level, and you realize, oh, I've never started a time trial, and we really need you to be able to have that experience. So that's why I say start working on it early. We don't expect you to be like in a month, have it done. Although some people try to do that, but that's not what we recommend. And then you progress from there. So what we just recently brought back into the mix. So several years ago, one of our Commissaire, Sarah Rodney, who used to live in the US, she's now in the Netherlands, right? Is where she moved to with her husband. But she developed what we refer to as the Chief Referee Workshop. And this was usually whenever officials get to be a B level, the general expectation is you're now should be able to go off and chief ref an event. We do have a lot of lifetime C officials that have been chief reffing events for longer than I can remember, and that's fine too. But this is really geared towards those who are wanting to advance and continue up the officiating career, if you will. So the Chief Referee Workshop brings people together of like that advanced C level. Maybe they're just like almost through their B modules, and it talks to them about what they should be looking at to be a chief referee. And so that's things like before the event, during the event, after the event. And it's actually like, I think it's a 1.5 day course. There's no exam. It's just you work together, you work in groups, you listen to lectures. It's a really, really good course. Well, we have brought that back, which will now be a requirement in order to upgrade to a B. When we weren't offering it, we couldn't require it because it wasn't being offered. We've committed to offering it at least once a year and twice if we have enough people to do it. Again, we usually will bring you into some location. In October, we brought people into Colorado Springs. It was run in conjunction with our newly minted NatCom course, and it was actually pretty fun. It was kind of like a mini summit, if you will, of officials, and people got to hang out for a while together. But anyway, so we have that piece that will also be part of the B upgrade process. Ryan, you mentioned like, how do people get experience, right? Because, and we recognize the fact, I mean, a lot of the stuff, you've never seen a stage race. So how are you expected to have that stage race experience, especially when you go into this new NatCom course, right? It's like, it's heavy emphasis on stage race, but how do you get that? We have three stage races in the US. We have Redlands Bicycle Classic, which is a national event, and we have 2 UCI stage races. Well, more than likely, you're not going to get appointed to the UCI stage race initially. Redlands could be a possibility as an assistant judge, perhaps, to give you some of that experience. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you ask or request to work some of these races, like I see, we open it up to all levels of officials, and I see names of people, I have no idea who they are. A lot of C officials, which is fine, a lot of B officials, which is fine. And then as you start getting to that next level, the names become more and more familiar, and a lot of us have worked with you, that type of thing. So it's about kind of figuring out who you are and what you want to do. One of my suggestions would be, if you have the means to do it, would be to actually work with your local association, one, to get your normal race experience that you need. They're the ones who are going to generally assign the races that you're actually eligible to work. For the national assignment process that we use the Com Manager tool for, most of those are really geared towards the upper level officials, with a few exceptions. So the local association is key in the development of a brand new C or those brand new B officials. The national championships that we offer through USA Cycling are also on Com Manager, and those we assign the full entire crew for. And this is where we have the ability to maybe bring in some less experienced people to get them some of that experience. Where we're taking, if there are events, so we're kind of taking the burden of the cost and everything off of like sending a brand new C official to, flying them across the country to work a race. We're kind of taking the burden off of the race director to do that because we're footing the bill for those. Also, a lot of our national championships, not all of them, but a lot of the key ones, I think we have 6 total that we do offer like apprenticeships for. So as an apprentice, what we're looking for when you see those positions is either not a brand new category C, but maybe a C official who's been working, for a while, or maybe those brand new minted Cat B officials, somebody that's showing promise in those disciplines to apply for those positions. And then what we'll do is you won't be paid as an official, but there's on those 6 events there's normally some sort of support, like level of support provided. So you'll always get lodging, you'll always get per diem. About half of them, you'll get like a travel allowance up to a certain amount. Obviously, you have to provide receipts and stuff like that. And the other one, I think you get a little bit of a travel allowance as well, but it's a little bit less. So that's a great way, if you have the means, to be able to take time off of work, kind of help foot the bill to get yourself there. That's a great way to get experience. And also, usually those events are multiple days, right? So it's not like you're going in one day, you're working with like these higher level officials, and then you go away. You're there for like 4 or 5 days at least. And so you have time to build upon your skills. You have time to like in advance say, hey, I want to work on, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm working through my B modules. I really need this experience. And normally our chief referees at those events will help you get some of that experience, or the people that they assign you to work with will help you gain that experience. And then they can provide feedback, which will help you grow in your role. The other thing that you could do, and we saw a lot of this last year, is you can just volunteer to go to races. So if you live in an area where there's big races, and California is one of them, they've got a lot of nice size, maybe not national level races, but pretty big criteriums that take place there. And even if you're not assigned to the crew, I can't ever think of a time where somebody has said, hey, I would like to go to Manhattan Beach and shadow, right? Shadow the officials crew. And normally you're more than welcome to come, but it's like, don't just show up. I would say the best approach for you to reach out to me or the officials at usacycling.org email. Tell me what it is that event you want to do, and then I will work to get you hooked up with the right people. The nice thing about that is it's not costing the race director or anything. I'm sure you're going to get lunch. I don't think they're going to make you sit there and not eat when they hand out lunch to everybody. I'm sure you'll get lunch, but you won't get paid, but you will gain a lot in experience. This past year, we saw quite a few of our C-level officials making trips over the country. Tour the Gila. Ryan, how many did we have? 2 or 3 there?
2.
Okay, yeah. 2 there. I think it was our Elite Track Nationals in Carson. We had 2 people that showed up to work. And again, they showed up on the days that they could. So maybe they were there the whole time, and maybe they were only there for the weekend because of their regular job. But that is also valuable experience. And that's also experience you can use on your resume. So whenever you get ready to upgrade to the higher levels, we're generally going to ask you, can you give me your race resume? Tell me what you've been doing since you became level B or since you became a NatCom. And that helps us kind of formulate where we want to take you. The other thing I think is critical. And again, this goes back where there's so many officials across the country, and every area they may be able to ID or identify certain officials that seem to be pretty good at what they're doing. But if they never get to my level, we have no idea that they're there. So one of the things I really enjoyed about having this chief referee workshop in Colorado Springs is I met so many people that I had never known. Names I had never heard of before came up to me and asked, hey, can we talk about whatever? And, my first question is always like, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? And then, there's certain things that we can do to help with that. I mean, granted, they're still at that CB level, but then we know that there's an interest there, and we know that they have the ability to travel, or that they really want experience they need stage race experience, or they really want to go to a mountain bike race. They've worked some local mountain bike races, but they've never worked with like a full crew. They start the race, it finishes, and they go home. So what can we do to help get them that? Or maybe they have an interest in track racing. They don't have a track near them, but they want to see what it's about. So there's ways for us to help identify who those people are and where we can take them to help them get some of the experience that they need.
And would you say too, so I know that you were saying that chief referee workshop is a great place for people to get on your radar. If we have someone in our area, is it reasonable to send you a message, or, send the NTC a message to say, hey, I have someone who's really interested, they're doing extremely well, etc.?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's
absolutely. And it can be to anybody. It can be to me. It can be to another member of the NTC. If you send them to me, then I'm at least aware of them, and the NTC doesn't forget to tell me about them. I mean, I do to some extent maintain a little bit of a list of names, and I try to write down the name and where they're from and what their interest is and where they want to go. We have some, like I said, we have some young, eager officials that really want to be able to make it to the IC level, whether or not they really understand what that means yet or not. But that's not for me to decide. I mean, that's for them. And, my job is to make sure that there's opportunity for them, or try to get them some opportunity. Again, it gets back to that, how many races do we have?
Right.
Track's a hard one, because it's like we don't have a lot of track races, but we don't have a lot of track officials either. So there's a really good opportunity there. Also, really great opportunity on the mountain bike side. And a lot of our skills for those that are road officials translate over to those events as well. So it's just a matter of learning how to do something differently. But yeah, so send me those names. I'm happy if they reach out directly, that's fine too. Most of the mentoring that happens for those newer officials comes at that local level. So we rely kind of on the local association and the officials in that area. So Marcy and Ryan, and when you're out working your local races, which I know you both do, you guys have done your training, and you're kind of taking what you've learned and you're passing it on to the next generation, which is what we need. But that level, the mentoring needs to start locally, and then let's further develop them and see, give them a shot. I mean, not everybody is going to make it, especially if they have desires to be an ENC or an IC, because there's age limits on that. So the first question I ask is, where do you want to go? And if they tell me they want to be an IC, then my next question is, how old are you? And I know that's one of those taboo questions we're not supposed to ask, but I mean, in reality, if you tell me today you're 47 and you want to be an IC and you're a category B official, you're probably not going to make it. And it's not because we don't think you're good enough. It's just the opportunity of when those courses are offered. So the ENC courses are offered yearly, but the IC courses are offered sometimes every third year, every 4 years. So like for example, our next road course, IC course, isn't until 2026. So that's 2 more years that we're waiting, right? So essentially 3 years that we will have gone without having one. So there's a little bit of that. So it takes a little bit of planning. There's also in addition to what you want, there's also officials like a Ryan or a Marcy who are already in the pipeline, and they have desires of being somewhere as well. So then you kind of come into play with, how do you fit in with the people that we already have vying for those spots? Because it's interesting on our side, we open our courses and allow any number to come. But on the IC course, like for the ENC classes, they'll allow us to send 2 people, but only 2 people if one of them is female. So essentially we get 1 slot. If we're fortunate to have a female, then they'll take 2. And the same thing for the international course. Sometimes they'll tell you, we're not going to take anybody from the United States. Okay. We'll wait another 4 years. But I mean, it's very limited in what they offer and the positions that are available. That's why if they have an interest, this is something that we need to get on our radar like immediately, so that we can start planning for the future and kind of looking, where are they now? Where do they need to be by what year? And what's realistically, can they get there?
I would say also another thing that's tricky with the UCI courses, they ask for interest way before the class, and then you don't know. And then, so for my group, we found out about 6 weeks out that we needed to spend a week in Italy. So a lot of the participants were from Europe, so it was a little easier for them. But kind of having that availability to drop everything, spend the money, and take a week to go do that ends up being definitely tricky as well. So for anyone who is planning on getting to that level, that is absolutely something to take into consideration.
Yeah, it's definitely harder for the people from the Americas to get there. Where Europe, it's just like a quick train ride over. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And Marcy, along those lines, they're normally not as slow with telling you you're in the class as they were this year. I think with having the World Championships and the Olympics, they got a little behind, but normally we were supposed to hear who was accepted into the courses, I think by the end of May is what they told us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we didn't hear till when, August? I can't remember.
We didn't get course details until the middle of September. But yeah, I don't remember when we.
Yeah. So yeah, the UCI works on the UCI's time. So, but yeah, this year they were especially slow with getting that information out. But yeah, I mean, it's right. I mean, they'll usually send something out in March that says, hey, we're going to offer these ENC courses. We have to have your nominations, like your 1 person or your 2 people by this deadline. And then it's a matter of us reaching out to whoever's at the level that can advance and of the proper age to see who's interested, and then whittling down to who our choices are going to be to send. If we could send everybody, it'd be a lot easier, but we can't, unfortunately.
Yeah, Bonnie, thank you so much for providing this guidance for our newer officials. It definitely is good to see a path toward possible advancement opportunities. And it's really great for those who will be listening to finally see Bonnie in a different light in providing the insights that goes into the technical director role. I certainly learned a few things that I didn't know about. So,
like bunk beds at the mechanics course.
Bunk beds at the mechanic course. Yeah, that's one of them.
Your off-site suites.
Yes. Yeah.
I wish we had more time with you, Bonnie. I don't think we can do 3-hour, 4-hour podcasts, but this gives us an opportunity for future invitations for you, Bonnie, to come on to the podcast. We really appreciate you joining us today for the final episode, and hopefully we'll be back for a 3rd season. Hopefully everybody has a good 2024 holidays, and Marcy and I will take the time to think about more ideas for 2025. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining today on the podcast. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, it was fun. Like I said, when we started this, I wasn't expecting that I would be a guest ever, but when you asked, I was like, okay. I guess I can't really say no, but no, it was fun. I'm happy to do it anytime. And again, for those who need to reach out, if you would use the official's email, that's the easiest way, because I will tell you, if you send it to my personal email, it's going to roll off that first page in a matter of an hour, and it's may get lost and never ever answered, unfortunately. But we do track the officials' inbox, and that is probably the best surefire way of getting a response.
Nice.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Cool.
Bonnie.
You're
you, Bonnie.
welcome. You're welcome, you guys. Thank you for doing this.